This is the one who will finally defeat Rick. Evil Morty, whose original name is unknown, is without a doubt the most brilliant character in the series, and I'll explain why. He is smarter than Rick, even more powerful, and when his master plan is complete, neither Rick nor anyone else will stop him. This is Evil Morty, the mastermind who will finally destroy Rick once and for all. But what exactly is this plan, and why do we say that only he can carry it out? In today's video, we're going to explain why Evil Morty is the biggest villain in the show. Let's get started. As fans say, Evil Morty isn't just a Rick. In fact, he's even scarier than that. At that time, Evil Morty was part of the resistance group against the tyranny of Evil Rick. He wanted to change things for the better, but he would also use manipulation and force to achieve that goal. This duality makes him a much more complex character, and that's where we see the first major difference between him and any other version of Morty. In the Season 5 finale, Evil Morty decided to go further and break the central finite curve, something that no one had ever done before. He's someone who wants more than what Rick offers. Evil Morty wants to go beyond Rick. That's why he's so dangerous. Basically, it's the firewall that keeps Rick dominant across the multiverse. When he created it, Rick thought that he was protecting his own universe from outside influences, but in reality, he did it to maintain his power. Rick is indeed the source of most problems in the multiverse. Maybe Mortys wouldn't be so oppressed. Maybe they wouldn't be used as pawns. Maybe they would have more freedoms. Who knows? He wants to create a universe where Rick isn't the smartest. A universe where he doesn't impose his will on others. A universe where Mortys aren't just victims of circumstances. But the fact is that Rick is the one who created that reality. He's responsible for creating the central finite curve. He's responsible for all the wars between Ricks, and he's the main reason why Mortys have such a hard life. The real problem is the system that allows Rick to be at the center of everything. He's kept the multi-universe closed off to prevent anyone from getting too powerful. They're starting to see him for what he really is, a selfish and manipulative tyrant. And that's why Evil Morty is so dangerous. He's manipulated everyone into thinking that he's the only one who can protect them. But now things are changing. The system that allows Rick to dominate everyone, that's what needs to be destroyed, and only Evil Morty has the courage and intelligence to do it. While all the other Mortys simply looked for guidance under Evil Rick, Evil Morty managed to break free from his control and lead the other Mortys to defeat him. Now let me ask you this. What if Evil Morty is right? What if Rick is the real villain in the story? What if the central finite curve is just a tool of oppression? After all, Rick is known for having clones of himself and his enemies, so it's not impossible that he has a clone of Evil Morty as well. Of course, we don't know exactly how he plans to achieve this. Breaking the central finite curve is just the beginning. There are still many unknown elements to consider. What new threats will arise? Does he have any other powers? Will there be a new world order? We'll have to wait and see. And if that's true, then Evil Morty isn't just a villain, he's a hero. He didn't want to fight for anyone, not even for a better future. Do you know anyone else who might like this video? Share it with them. Thanks for watching. See you next time. He's willing to risk it all to achieve his goals, even if it means facing Rick himself. So Rick could be the one who will finally defeat Rick. He's shown that he's capable of doing whatever it takes to win, and Rick knows that better than anyone. Evil Morty isn't just fighting Rick. He's fighting the idea of Rick. The very notion of Rick's superiority. He wants to destroy the Rick-centric system from its roots. He wanted to be free to choose his own path. That's why he's always alone. He doesn't trust anyone. We've seen many versions of Morty, But if there's one thing that makes Evil Morty stand out, it's that he isn't just another version of Morty. That's why he did it. He wanted to do something that even Rick couldn't do. But if that's no longer the case, then his whole persona collapses like a house of cards. Rick's power comes from being special, from being unique, from being the smartest. But if he's no longer special, then he's nothing. He loses all meaning. And that's why he's the most similar to him. One is Morty, who wants to help Beth find her mother, and the other is Evil Morty, who wants to reach true freedom. For him, the problem is that Rick is at the center of it all, and that's the origin of the problem. If there's one thing that annoys Evil Morty, it's being a pawn in someone else's game, even if it's for the greater good. These are two completely different motivations, but both equally valid. He first appeared in the episode Close Encounters of the Rick Kind, which was broadcast in Season 1. To put it simply, Evil Morty is the only character who has broken away from the control of any Rick, and that's why he is so important. However, he secretly installed cameras everywhere to monitor everyone's actions. He also ordered the creation of new prisons, called Seahorse Marasms, to permanently incarcerate anyone who opposed him. That's what made him so different. He could have easily remained under the thumb of any Rick, like all the other Mortys, but he wasn't willing to accept it. This already shows us that he is much smarter and braver than the other Mortys. In the second season, Evil Morty was chosen to replace Evil Rick in the Citadel after the latter was banished. But we didn't know about his plan at that time. Then in Season 3, Evil Morty became president of the Citadel. At first, everything seemed fine. He began a series of social reforms, but he also began to make some very interesting moves in secret. For example, he opened up Jerryboree nightclub to allow people of both genders to drink together, which changed the Citadel forever. It's clear that despite being considered a hero, he has both good and bad sides. After he imprisoned almost all Ricks, including Rick C-137, he reveals his plan. It shocked fans and raised more questions than it answered. Remember that the central finite curve is a multiverse firewall that separates universes where Rick is the smartest from those where he is not. So breaking the central finite curve would mean chaos for Rick and the rest of the multi-universe. Now we understand that Evil Morty isn't just a Morty or a villain. So far, we've seen two types of characters who want to break the central finite curve. The thing is, Evil Morty rejects the current system, whether it's dominated by Rick or not. That's why he left the Resistance, when Evil Rick offered them a place in his army. However, this doesn't mean he's evil. In fact, he might be right. If the central finite curve hadn't existed, maybe things would be different, and that's where Evil Morty's plan comes into play. You can think of it however you want, but that's essentially what Evil Morty wants. One thing is for sure, though, Evil Morty isn't afraid of anything or anyone. Rick's identity is built on the idea that he's the smartest person around. That's what Evil Morty is exploiting, and that's why he's the only one who can defeat Rick. In fact, Rick is just a symptom of a much larger problem. So far, Rick has been able to maintain his superiority by keeping everyone else in the dark. Thanks to Evil Morty, everyone is starting to realize that Rick isn't the hero they thought he was. He is opening everyone's eyes to the truth, and that is why he is the only one who can defeat Rick. It is an interesting theory that could change everything we thought we knew about the Rick and Morty universe. And, speaking of Rick, what if he's the one who created Evil Morty? What if he's been manipulating Evil Morty all along? If that's the case, then Evil Morty's plan could be part of Rick's greater plan to dominate the multiverse. Finally, will Morty ever join Evil Morty's side? What do you think? I'm waiting for your comments. If you've made it this far, I'm sure you're a fan of Rick and Morty.